Hi everybody, this is Matty Simmons, and this is where comedy happens. Oh, what?
Oh, you left half your breakfast
again?
on your shirt.
That's in case I get hungry later. And this is the director of our show, Kate Simmons, my daughter.
All right, Dad, let's tell everyone who our guest is today.
Our special guest, is one of the greats in film. Director, producer, screenwriter, great dramatic actor, great comedy actor, Billy Bob Thornton.
Oh, one of my favorite actors of all time, and the star of my favorite Christmas movie of all time, Bad Santa.
Hey, you forgetting about the Christmas movie that paid your way through college, Christmas Vacation?
Okay, well, Bad Santa is then my second favorite Christmas movie
It's my
of all
second
time,
favorite
yeah.
too.
All right, Maddie, you want to tell us some jokes?
I will. I'll tell a
All
couple
right,
of jokes.
Want to wait for my cue?
Okay.
All right, cool. Action.
I'm going to tell you a hunting joke. These two guys are walking through the forest, guns in hand, backpacks on their back, when suddenly one of them drops his gun, grabs his heart, whirls around and falls to the floor with a heart attack. The other guy is panicky. He doesn't know what to do. He looks down, he looks around, he grabs his phone, he calls 911. He says, my partner just had a heart attack. What do I do? The man at 911 says, take it easy, calm down. This is a step-by-step procedure, but you have to stay cool. First thing you do, make sure he's dead. The guy puts down the phone, and suddenly we hear, boom! Comes back, picks up the phone, and says, okay, that was step one. He's dead. And now, we'll be right back with Billy Bob Thornton. Hey, we're back, and I'm back with pride because I have some excitement when I've done a couple of movies where I both wrote and produced them, and I said, boy, that's great. And then I shrink with envy thinking about our guest tonight, because as we said earlier, he's a writer, a director, a producer, and most of all, perhaps best known of all, he's a great dramatic actor and a great comedy actor. Billy Bob, welcome.
Well, thanks, Matty.
Billy Bob Thornton. I hear you just got back from tour.
Yeah,
So you're a musician too?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've been playing since I was a kid. I actually started out in music and then accidentally became an actor. And,
how accidentally?
Well, I came to LA just for music. I was working as a roadie and touring with bands and stuff like that since I was a teenager. And then I came to LA with a friend of mine who wanted to be a screenwriter, and I got in this acting class through the one guy I met out here, and went in this acting class, and the teacher said, you know, you can do this, you ought to stick with it. And I did. The next thing you know, I got a little part on Matlock or whatever it was, divorce court, whatever. And so I had to stick with what I was making money at. So during the 80s,
Paying the rent.
Exactly. And so in the 80s, I didn't play much music, and I started back in the 90s. And so we do 1 or 2 tours a year with a band called the Boxmasters. We just turned out our 8th album.
Huh.
And just got back from a tour over the U.S. a couple of weeks ago. Went as far as, we started in Napa, went all the way to Bar Harbor, Maine, and back. So we've been all over. It was pretty brutal. 43 shows in 52 days.
Shooting movies is easy compared to touring.
Well, they both got their pluses and minuses, you know.
Especially if you do everything
Yeah.
for the movie like you do.
Yeah, I mean, if you're directing a movie and starring in it and stuff, it takes up a lot of your life. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, 2 of my very favorite comedies are Bandits and Bad Santa. Bad Santa is truly a unbelievably funny movie.
Oh, thank you.
And I congratulate you on
Oh, thank you very much.
what inspired you to do Bad Santa? I mean,
well, it was one of those where my manager sent it to me, and we've been together. He's been my manager for 30 years, so we kind of yell at each other like brothers. You know, it's not like one of those real cold business relationships. And there were 2 movies that he talked me into doing, and I've always thanked him for it. There were some others he talked me into doing that I punched him out for, but one way or the other, he talked me into doing Monsters Ball, and he talked me into doing Bad Santa, and I'm glad he did on both of them. Bad Santa, he sent me, he said, "Will you read this?" And he told me the premise, and I said, well, that's probably the end of my career, to do something like that. And he sent it over, and I read about a third of it, and I called him back, and I said, I haven't even finished this thing yet, but I got to do it. I said, I've never read anything like this. And it sort of spawned a lot of other movies, in that vein. Like after Bad Santa, they started making, bad, teachers, bad grandpas, and bad next door neighbor, and whatever. Yeah.
Well, you do comedy so well. But you, of course, to me, the hallmark, the first was Sling Blade. Mm. I was so struck by your performance. I've always remembered the opening scene where you, it seems, don't say anything. Mm-hmm. There's other fellows talking, and the camera's on your face, and in that few minutes, you know the character, and you're into the movie.
No, thank you. I loved that opening scene. We had the actor you're referring to is J.T. Walsh. He was amazing.
Yes.
And God rest his soul. And J.T. was he drags a chair across the room, and we just let it go. We just shot the whole thing. He's dragging a chair for like a minute, and the studio at first, they were kind of like, maybe you want to cut that down a little bit. And I said, yeah, trust me, it's going to be okay. And it became a thing from that movie. People talked about it a lot. But it was a good example of putting people in parts that you normally wouldn't see them. And like John Ritter, who I'd been working with in television, he was known as just like a sitcom guy who tripped over the couch in Three's Company and all that, but I knew that John was a really good actor, so we put him in that part, and he was amazing in it. He and Dwight Yoakam both, Natalie Canterday, Lucas Black, all of them, and we made that movie for $980,000.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Oh my God! $980,000. That's what they pay the people to prepare the food now.
Oh yeah, exactly. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you couldn't make a movie in a closet for that much now.
I know. We made Animal House for 2.8.
Oh yeah.
That was big budget.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Compared to Spring Blade.
Oh yeah.
Sling
exactly.
Blade. I get there.
No doubt.
Now I know you're doing a TV show.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Well, it's right now I'm doing Goliath. We're going to start our 3rd season here pretty soon, and I was kind of late to the party on this whole streaming and Amazon and HBO and all that kind of stuff, because when I was coming up, TV was a bad word for a film actor.
Yeah.
And now the independent film business is pretty much over with, and the big studios mostly do event movies. So either I play the mayor in Batman, or I do something on Amazon or HBO or whatever it is, Netflix, all those. And that's really where independent film is now. It's on those streaming things. And so essentially we're doing like an 8-hour independent film, which is great because you got time to develop characters and a story. And I've actually really enjoyed it. And it started with Fargo when I did the first season of Fargo.
Fargo's terrific.
So after I did Fargo, I thought, you know what, this is where it's at now. And now everybody's doing it. It's like, that's what you want to do. Because if you do an independent film these days, they give you no budget and it gets some little distributor, nobody ever sees it. But, you do something on Amazon, everybody sees it that, has Amazon.
I stream all the time.
Yeah, good.
I'm a streamer. Now, we're going to take a quick break. Be back very soon. Billy Bob Thornton. So we're back with Billy Bob. Billy, did they give you 5 different checks when you do all those things for a movie, or just one check?
It's only one.
Only
It's one check,
One big one, I
unfortunately.
assume.
Yeah, exactly. They try.
Really?
It's kind of like having your birthday on Christmas Day. You know.
You look at all the people you're putting out of work, though.
Yeah, it's true.
Hey, Billy, we talked about, and I want to talk more about it, Bad Santa, but I loved Bandits. And I remember there's a scene in Bandits that I remember so well. Why don't you describe it? It's when we know that you and Bruce Willis are robbing these banks, and the ultimate goal is to open a nightclub. Well, you take it from there. And because it's the look on your face when Kate Blanchett sings.
Oh yeah. It's Bandits is about these 2 guys who end up kind of hijacking this woman's car, and it's these guys. They're called the sleepover bandits, and they what they do is they go to the home of the bank manager and hold them hostage at their house, and then the next morning they go with them to the bank and with them to open up, and then they rob the bank. That's their MO. And in the middle of all of it, you know, we end up with this girl who's wanting to leave her husband. Her life's going nowhere, and I'm the more sort of like organized one. I like sort of phobic and very anal about stuff, you know. And so Bruce all of a sudden he falls falls for Kate Blanchett, and I can't believe that he's bringing this strange girl into the bunch, you know. And of course then I fall for her too, and you got a competition between 2 very different guys. The macho guy, played by Bruce, and the guy who's twitchy and has allergies and phobias, being me, which is not too far from real life. But it was probably the best experience I ever had on a movie in terms of the actual making of the movie and the locations. We started up in Oregon and did it in order all the way back down to Century City. And the locations and the experience were just fabulous. And you know, it was just you never know how things are going to turn out. In other words, there could be a good experience on a movie, and the movie doesn't turn out so well, or you could have a horrible experience, but then the movie's good. You just never know. This was one of those where we got a good movie out of a great experience, and we really
and that
loved
one
it.
scene, I just love that scene, where she wants to sing at your nightclub once you get to Mexico.
Oh, right, yes. Oh, yeah.
And you ask her to sing.
Yeah, and it's horrible, yeah.
And she's so bad.
Yeah.
And it was like, in reverse, the dramatic scene in Sling Blade where you're just looking.
Right.
But here, you and Bruce just turn and look at each other, and I fell on the floor.
Oh, good.
You were in such agony listening to her sing.
Yeah. It was like our faces were made out of modeling clay, and they were just slowly sinking a little bit, yeah. Yeah.
It's so great when you can get laughter like that out of no words.
Right.
I mean, her singing, but then
Sure.
the look was the 2 of you.
Well, that was the best. I mean, that's where I first got interested in comedy, was from watching, not necessarily always silent films, but ones where facial expressions were a big part of it, you know. And I mean, like Oliver Hardy and Stan Laurel. I mean, those are 2 classic examples, you know, of guys who had expressions that, you know, just always, it was just part of who they were, and you could tell everything they were thinking by looking at their faces.
It's so marvelous when that happens on screen. Yeah. Because some actors speak the words, but their bodies don't speak the words.
Right, exactly.
Now we're on comedy. So what was the first comedy? Was that the first comedy you did, or had you done comedy before that?
Oh, no, well, I mean, I had little bits in the 80s when I was coming up, because you just took whatever you could get, right?
Sure.
And so I had a couple of you know, just little things on sitcoms and stuff. And on stage, I mean, I did stage for years, and I did some comedies there, but these were like one-act plays and stuff. But I guess the first comedy on film I did must have been, well, I did 3 episodes of Evening Shade with Burt Reynolds, and who just passed away recently. And Burt was really, really good to me. And the first episode I did of it, I had one scene, and I just came to his house. His father had passed away, and I brought some flowers from the florist. I was a delivery guy. And it turned into a really nice little scene that was kind of emotional. But then after that, he liked me enough to have me on playing his younger cousin. So I did 2 episodes as his cousin. And that was before a live audience for CBS, you know. And
what was the funniest scene you think you've ever done in a movie?
Funniest scene I ever did in a movie?
Was it from Bad Santa or where?
Well, yeah, I mean, probably so. I mean, I think there are several in there, several in Bad Santa that I would say are probably some of my best ones.
Tell us about it.
You know, for instance, I always like the scene where I come up an escalator passed out in Bad Santa, and then realize that the little guy and the kids and everybody are waiting, and I go and I beat up a plaster jackass. And it was real politically incorrect. As a matter of fact, they made us take out a couple of words from it. Even in Bad Santa, they censored a couple of things that I said to the jackass. But I always liked that scene. And anything with the kid. I mean, every scene with the kid, I always love those scenes. And there's actually one in Bandits where I think I've had a stroke, where I think I'm smelling burning feathers and stuff that I do with Cate Blanchett that I'm very fond of.
We'll be right back with Billy Bob Thornton. Okay, we're back with my friend Billy Bob Thornton. Billy, what was the favorite one-liner in any of your movies? Remember any?
Yeah, my favorite one, I'm not sure I can say it. Most of my comedies have been fairly profane. So I bring this hooker home to my hotel room or my creepy apartment in Bad Santa, and the phone rings and I go, "Hey, I gotta answer this. Go take a shower. You smell like a bum's nutsack."
What picture was that?
That's in Bad Santa.
Bad Santa.
Yeah.
I didn't remember that.
I just loved that.
Yeah. I'll get further on that. What's your favorite comedy scene in anybody else's movie or line?
Oh, wow. You know, I still love the movie The Jerk with Steve Martin.
Oh,
I think that was one of the greatest comedy movies ever. And I mean, like pretty much everything in it. But I like, at one point, Steve Martin, who is working at a gas station, and this guy, played by Emmett Walsh, has just I guess he's losing his mind. He randomly picks a name out of the phone book. And Steve Martin's character has just gotten his name in the phone book, which he's very proud of. And this guy picks his name randomly to kill. And Steve Martin's working at this gas station, and then Emmett Walsh starts shooting at him, and he hits the oil cans, and Steve Martin says he hates these cans. And anyway, it takes him a while to realize.
We just had Carl Gottlieb, who wrote The Jerk, on the show.
Oh, wow.
And one of us mentioned that one of our favorites, it was the opening line of the movie, I was born a poor black child.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's pretty great.
Famous line, great line.
And he also is talking about the blues because he lives with a black family, and they play like the blues from the St. Louis station or whatever.
Yes.
And his mother asks him what's wrong with him, and he says something about this music is just depressing.
And what's your favorite, other than yours,
Mm-hmm.
your favorite comedy movie?
I'd have to say The Jerk and a movie called The Ghost of Mr. Chicken with Don Knotts.
Wow.
I love that movie.
Wow, that's pulling one out of the hat.
I used to, when that came out in my little town where I was raised, we had one theater, and
Was that Hot Springs?
it was in Malvern, which is near Hot Springs,
Right.
Arkansas. And it was called the Ritz Theater, and on Saturdays they would play the movie several times, and that was in the days when they didn't kick you out. Like, in other words, if you wanted to stay and watch every showing, you could, and I did with The Ghost of Mr. Chicken, and I saw it in the theater when I was 11 years old, and I stayed and watched it over and over and over. So I'd say The Jerk and that, and then I also love the original Heartbreak Kid with Charles Grodin. Yeah, and Elaine May, directed
Yes.
that, and she, her daughter was the lead actress.
Yes, was the star of it, yes.
Yeah,
She
I
was a
loved it.
one movie person.
Exactly, but that's one of my favorites. Also, the thing about the Heartbreak Kid, it's so funny, but it's so real and excruciating. It's like painful to watch. I mean, Eddie Albert's so imposing in it as the father of Sybil Shepherd.
Yes, he was great in that movie. That's a terrific movie.
Yeah.
I think that the secret to good comedy is what you mentioned earlier, is something you can relate to, something you.
Sure.
And I think even Bad Santa, of course, no one in the world has ever seen a Santa like the one you played, but yet
Hope
you
not.
related to it because you always suspected that maybe that Santa isn't as sweet as over there at Macy's or wherever, isn't as sweet as you may have thought he was.
Yeah, there's no telling, what those guys are.
You never did stand up, did you, or did you? Knowing you, anything could be possible.
I am terrified of that. Probably more than anything in the world, I think stand-up comedy must be the scariest thing in the world. I don't think I could do it. I kind of have to be in I'm an improvisational actor, but to get up there where you know that you're looking for a result, which is for people to laugh, and if they don't, you're done right away. So it scares me, but I have a lot of friends who are stand-up comics.
Do you tell any jokes?
Do I tell jokes? I forget every joke I've ever heard except there's this one that it's a little off color, but it just makes me laugh, and it's really stupid. But it's what's the one thing you don't want to hear when you're giving Willie Nelson a job? I'm not Willie Nelson, which I always thought was really hysterical. But most jokes I don't remember. But I always kind of like stand-up comics who just, more than telling jokes, they tell stories about life that are humorous. That was, Richard Pryor did that, and but I go way back with watching comics on Ed Sullivan, like
Bob Hope.
And Bob Hope and all those guys. And I remember a guy named Jackie Vernon, who was a big heavy set guy.
Remember him.
And Jackie Vernon used to do this thing. I was a little kid when I saw this. I don't know why I thought it was funny, but he was very deadpan, and he would walk on stage with a trumpet. He didn't play it or anything; he just held a trumpet. And he says, "Yeah, people always ask me, what are you doing with the trumpet?" And he says, "I went in a store one day and I was either going to buy a T-shirt or the trumpet, so I bought the trumpet." But he never really did anything with it. But I remember all this. Probably. But I liked a lot of those guys. I liked Red Skelton and Jack Benny. But in terms of these days, I have a lot of friends who are stand-up comics who I admire a lot, like Ron White. I think is hysterical. Rick Overton, Greg Travis, a lot of these guys.
You go to comedy clubs?
Once in a blue moon, but I always sit back in the far corner because I have this also a fear of being called out by the comic. Like, that terrifies me. Like, even if I go to a show in Vegas It could be like the Rockettes or whatever it is. I sit as far back as I can because I don't ever want to be taken on stage to get sawed in half or whatever. You know what I mean? I'm just not big on that. I don't
No, I know.
like that kind of
Getting
attention.
sawed in half is no fun.
Well, yeah, that's true. But yeah, I love stand-up comics, and I think they're brilliant. And it's a tough world to get into, and I could never do it, but I sure admire them quite a bit. Norm Macdonald I always thought was funny because he's so dry. You know, Stephen Wright is another guy.
He's unbelievable. I
love
love the
that
way he
guy.
delivers his lines.
I do too.
And it's so each of them is a pearl.
Oh, one of my favorites. He goes, bought some powdered water, only I don't know what to mix it with. You know, but yeah, he's pretty great.
Yeah, and nearly everybody we've ever had on the show always mentioned Richard Pryor.
Yeah.
They're much along the same line, but I love that you brought in Stephen Wright, who I think is great.
Oh, I think it's true. Well, also, you know, you got to mention George Carlin as well
They
as.
mention Carlin frequently.
And the other probably, you know, one that I would have to say who brought on a whole new thing was Sam Kinison. You know, Sam was very different.
Yeah.
And he said one time.
Very different.
Very different. Well, I won't do it in the screaming voice or anything, but one of my favorite things he said was, why don't you, he said, people come to me all the time, women come up to me and they say, why are all your jokes about women? Why don't you tell jokes about men? He said, I'll tell you why. Because a man never made me want to drive my car into a wall. And so, yeah.
And he did it angrily, right?
He did it, oh yeah, he screamed it. And he used some other language.
Oh, gosh, Billy, it's been so great. So great being with you, seeing you again. I haven't seen you in a couple of years.
Yeah.
And you are not only one of my very favorite movie makers, but you're one of my very favorite people, and I mean that without baloney.
Wow.
I just think you're a great guy, and keep it up.
Well, you know what? Back at you. And if it weren't for you, I probably wouldn't have gotten into comedy because I was a National Lampoon guy.
That's great. That makes me feel very good. You made my day. Thank you, Billy Bob Thornton. Bye, everybody.